So in the last video we kind of went through some of the basic construction requirements for the ASTM 887 and then started going over some of the leg loop construction on my harness, as well as the bridge and the shackles that I chose to use for the lower Ds. And kind of continuing with that overview, we have the waist belt. So this is the prototype one, and I don't have any kind of like finish fabric over the life support on this one, unlike the more finished version. So we can kind of see everything that's going on here. And basically the main webbing structure of this is made up of the same two webbing that makes up the leg loops. We have the 1 3/4 webbing, and then we have our 1-inch webbing. And basically the 1 3/4 is kind of the main waist belt. On one side we have a ISC slide buckle that's bar tacked in with 4 big beefy bar tacks, and then it runs the whole length of the harness and then just kind of has a regular tail like this that can be fed through the buckle. And I just went with a slide buckle because that's what's on my regular work saddle, my camp saddle, and I kind of like the slide buckle just because you're guaranteed that it's going to adjust well. A lot of the like click buckles are kind of made to only be just adjusted every now and then, and I kind of like a slide buckle because you get the perfect fit like every time when you put your harness on, especially if you're shedding and switching layers and things like that. So I just kind of went the more simple route with a slide buckle instead of a quick buckle, and I've really liked it. And then we have kind of the substructure made up of this 1-inch webbing. Basically what it is it's sewn into a loop kind of on the back side of this 1 3/4 webbing, and that's what holds our D-rings in place, which are just ISC large aluminum rings. And kind of the way they're sewn in there is similar to my camp saddle. I like that they're like floppy, so you can like fold them back and forth, mainly because I think it keeps a lower profile, and then when you're climbing you can just kind of brush your lanyard out of the way so it hangs just like another couple more inches behind you. Because I've never liked having a lanyard on my lower Ds, because then I feel like when you're climbing really dynamically and stepping through the tree, your lanyard gets caught on your knees or it like flops between my legs, and I prefer it just to stay back and out of the way when I'm moving, and then when I'm ready for it I can kind of reach back and grab it and then use it and so forth. So I really like this design of having the D-rings be very movable. And then plenty of gear loops. I got gear loops in all different places on different versions of these saddles, but mainly they come out of the bottom and top of the substructure because I want to be able to put, this finish fabric over it. So we have gear loops on the top, and on the bottom I like plenty of gear loops. A saddle with a lot of gear loops is the best. I hate the tree motions. I know that you can add gear loops, but whenever I see so many people climbing in them who just haven't added any gear loops and it's just those garbage red ones on the back, it's like, that's terrible. I like good climbing gear loops. The Edelrid harnesses, the Petzl harnesses, the camp harnesses, they got it figured out. All of those harnesses have fantastic gear loops. So gear loops are good. We like those. And then I have some slots on the left side for just regular carabiners. I really like just having like a non-locking carabiner, not necessarily like a tool carrier, but I like a non-locking carabiner because it can kind of keep my lanyard nice and tidy, and also it can kind of move side to side and keep a lower profile. And then we have some slots for a tool carrier on the right side because I only carry my saw on the right side, and even though this is supposed to be more of a pruning harness, it's still nice to be able to take a saw up when you're pruning. And then we also have sewn on the bottom here just 2 adjustments for the leg bungee elastics on our leg loops. We just have some frame buckles here. Kind of the least developed part of this harness, because I was kind of getting into a time crunch and I didn't have a lot of good ways to load test to see to test a bunch of different designs before I put them into practice. Kind of just went with a really simple solution for our leg strops to connect to our lower Ds. And so basically what it is we just have a length of tubular webbing that's sewn to the waist belt, and then it gets fed through our side Ds and then bar tacked just past the side Ds. And instead of any kind of super fancy adjustment or anything like that, we just have a water knot tied, and that's what secures it to our lower Ds. It's not very high tech, and it's certainly not very appealing, but it works just fine, and it passed the test just fine. I would like to figure out something a little bit more elegant than that, just with some of my limitations with how many layers I can sew. It's just tough for me to figure out a way to attach something to it. I briefly thought about going the tree motion route, where they kind of have this sub ring behind their main ring that you can kind of connect the leg strap to, but I really don't like that. I want the side Ds to be mobile like this, so sewing the leg strap into the main webbing is a little bit more preferred. And I'm not a huge fan of how this works out, but it's simple water knot. Everybody knows a water knot, and you can just sew some marks in it to make it inspectable, make sure there's enough tail in it. But that's the deal for now. I'd like to figure out a solution where I can use maybe something like, I was kind of playing around with this splice sample. This is just some 4mm AM steel that I just have spliced into like a loopy, and I was thinking maybe something like that could be a cool solution for kind of an adjustable leg loop. I love splicing. It'd be really cool if I could incorporate more splicing into the harness, but maybe like a spliced loopy attached on here somehow would be a really cool and like slim, high-tech way of attaching the waist belt to the lower Ds, but we'll see. I'll figure something out, because now I do have more hardware to test stuff. Because initially when I built this harness, I thought maybe I'd send it off to somebody and have it tested, but then I just kind of ended up doing the testing myself. So then I did end up kind of building my own low-tech brake testing system, which we'll see in a little bit here. But that kind of takes us along into the testing portion of the video. So what tests do you have to do with your harness to make sure that it's safe to climb in? So we've done all of our construction. We got a nice, cool harness here. So basically, the standard says that you only need one of your harnesses to pass all the tests. If you need one for each test, like if they're like getting slightly damaged or deformed, then you can use a new harness for each test. But if one harness can just take all of it, then that's just fine. So that's what we have right here. This is our test harness. You can see this thing has been horribly beaten up and is not very nice looking like the other saddles are, because probably one of the more finicky parts of making these saddles is really nicely sewing the foam all together. So you can see on this one, there's foam on it, but it's not, nicely concealed. There's nothing in here. This was just going to be going on a dummy, so we just have the foam exposed on the inside. But similar to the prototype, we have all the life support webbing exposed so we can inspect it after every test and things like that. So there's 3 tests. There's 2 drop tests and a static pull test. That's our third test. So I kind of did them drop test first and then static pull test. So we have our 2 drop tests. The first drop test is to test your ventral attachment point, or our bridge, the thing we would normally clip into. So the way that we test that is we get a test torso, which is a kind of torso dummy that weighs 220 pounds or 100 kilos, and kind of the center of mass of the dummy is right about like where the waist belt is kind of the deal. And so basically I got an ash log that weighed 200 pounds originally, and then I kind of shaved it down so that it would fit the harness nicely. And then it only weighed about 190 pounds, and so then I had to add some weights to kind of, coordinate the center of mass and everything like that. I called the dummy Randy. So we got Randy, and you put the harness on Randy, and then the thing that makes the ASTM standard pretty exceptional is in the EN standards for the drop test, it's the same drop test kind of for both. You have something that weighs 100 kilos, you drop it a meter, or 42 inches. I dropped it 43 inches just to be sure that I dropped it far enough. And the thing is, in the EN standards, you drop it with a type A rated rope, which is a rope that can take that kind of fall. But in the ASTM, to ensure an absolute worst case scenario, you do not drop it into any rope at all whatsoever, or not a normal, polyester nylon rope. You drop it into a steel tether. So, like braided cable. The thing we would like cable trees with. So I spliced up a 42-inch section of cable, this tether, and so then we just attach it to this kind of drop tower that I made out of 4x6s. It's pretty low tech, and we got a Witchard shackle as our like quick release mechanism. So we raise the dummy up 43 inches and then pull the quick release and drop it. And basically, to make sure that it's completed the test correctly, it has to, one, catch the dummy, and then two, it has to be able to stay suspended for a certain amount of time to make sure that the harness isn't so compromised that it's just going to fail immediately after seeing that kind of load. So it does the fall, then it hangs for 3 minutes, and then you go up and inspect it. So what we're looking for is we're making sure that all the stitches are intact, we didn't break any of the stitches, and anything that is adjustable has not moved, I think, more than an inch. So you mark all of the straps, anything that could be adjustable on the harness, which on this harness, since there's no leg adjustments, our only adjustment points are just the waist belt and then the water knots that we have for our side strops. So I measured those, I marked them, and then dropped it, checked the markings. It did just fine for the drop test. It took me a couple drop tests though to make sure everything was like really nice and clean, make sure they're good drops. So this thing saw way more than just 1 or 2 drop tests.
1, 3, 2, 1. It did it! It did it!
Of course it did.
And then the other drop test is you test the side Ds. So in the standard, they kind of outline using a mandrel to test the side Ds, but since I just have the torso, I just did the side D drop test with the torso, as long as I could make sure that the bridge or side strap wasn't interfering in any way that would make it so that the Ds in the waist belt weren't taking all the load. And when you do the drop test with the waist belt, you drop it from whichever D-ring is closer to the buckle, or like the point of adjustment, so that it's, worst case scenario, because that's where it's going to fail, kind of, is most likely on the side where the where kind of your waist belt adjustment is. So that would be the left side of our harness. And did the same thing, lift it up 43 inches, drop it 43 inches, and then let it hang for 3 minutes, and then go up and inspect. We measured our waist belt. We inspect everything, make sure that all the textiles are intact, all of our stitches are intact, and that we haven't had the belt slide more than an inch.
There we go. Nice.
You want some more?
You got a stick. A stick. Oh, I'm in front of the camera.
And it did just fine. Belt didn't look like it moved even a little bit. Everything performed perfectly. The only thing that got tore up was just the foam that's up against the ash log. And I did those drop tests, and then our last test is our static pull test. You have to pull it up to 15 kilonewtons, or 3,300 pounds, and keep it there for about 3 minutes or so, and then bring it back down. And you have to apply the force relatively quickly, in under a minute. You can't be like really slow pulling it, so you have to get it up to your 3,300 pounds pretty quick, let it sit there for a while, and you're ideally pulling from like a seated position kind of. So you get it hooked up, you get it all put up on the dummy, and then try to anchor the dummy such that it's pulling as if the dummy were in a kind of seated climbing position. And so this is the part where I had a little bit of trouble testing it at first, because I didn't really have any way to measure pulling up to 3,300 pounds. So I tried to send it to ARB session, but they couldn't fit, they didn't have a torso dummy, and they couldn't fit the whole thing in their test bed. So the only thing that ended up happening was they brake tested the leg loops against the bridge, because that was the only thing that would fit. And that broke at 7,200 pounds, which is pretty crazy. It just blew out the stitching on one of the legs. And the shackles, I still use those shackles for the drop tests and stuff. I was still able to screw and unscrew them. There's only one that was like a little bit harder to unscrew, but they were still able to be assembled and put back together, and it made it through all the drop tests and the later static pull tests. So because that didn't work out, I was kind of getting into this crunch time, because I wanted to use this for the next climbing competition. So I bought a crane scale on Amazon that can go up to 6,600 pounds. And then I bought like an 8-ton just like hand crank puller, like a come along, and just basically use spider legs to tie the ash log to a tree, and then pulled against it with the come along and the crane scale to get it up to 3,300 pounds, and then keep it there. The issue was that my system's not like super non-dynamic. That's a really heavy load, and so I had to keep cranking to maintain it at 3,300 pounds, because all the ropes tied up to the tree would kind of creep and the load would start dropping, so I'd have to keep applying force to make sure it stayed sitting at that 3,300 pounds for the allotted amount of time, and then walk it back down again. It's definitely one of the sketchier things I've done, but I've also now used that system to like actually break stuff, so it works. It's not the most high-tech system, but I was able to get it up to that number and let it hang out there for a while, and then bring it back down and inspect everything. So we got this all back anchored to this tree. I know this doesn't look most scientific, but we are bringing it up to 3,000 pounds. We got one shackle loaded the correct way and one kind of chiefing up there. And I got too many soft goods in the system that are elastic, so I pull it. And then what are we back down to? Back down to 3,000 pounds, and it's slowly dropping. So we're going to pull it up to 3,400 again, and then let it sit there. 349, 370. So we're sitting at 3,400, 343, 342. So you can see it relaxing over time. But I'm going to set a timer, let it sit here for a while. And everything looked great. So I took a whole bunch of pictures, took a whole lot of notes and videos of the tests. And that was kind of my documentation that it had passed the test. So then, with that, I brought it to my next competition, and unfortunately, I was close to being able to use it, but they were just a little bit caught off guard. They wanted to be able to ask a little bit more questions to other people before they went ahead approving it. So unfortunately, I did not get to use this harness at a climbing competition yet. So I still got time to work on it and improve it and maybe do some more tests, but hopefully in the future this will see a climbing competition. Not this year, but maybe next year we'll be able to get this harness into a tree climbing comp and maybe get some more fun colors in the mix. What colors do you guys think I should do next? I got the pink and kind of like these were my color swatches for the pink harnesses. I've made 3 of the pink harnesses with kind of this hot pink and then kind of more of a red maroon, and then this is kind of the main finish harness I've been using. That's this nice green and then this brown ripstop, but there's a lot of fun color options out there. Kind of the cherry on top for me making it official is actually making tags for these. So right where I have this strap that kind of holds the buckle on, we have kind of our official tags for these harnesses. So this is this one's my number 2, my finish harness, and the prototype is number 1, and then I think this test harness was number 3. So these are my homemade harnesses, my classic don't try this at home stuff, you know. These have been a lot of fun to make, and let me know what you think. If you think there's a feature I should include that I haven't yet, but these things are really satisfying to make, like especially this really, I've made 2 of these finished ones, one in the green and tan and one in the pink and maroon, and they're just, this stuff is super cool, and maybe someday I'll be doing a lot more harness making, but we'll see. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Maybe we'll be working on some fancier leg strops in the next video, but thanks for watching. Bye.